So, thank you very much for the introduction. Thank you very much for being here. Cebu is one of my favorite places to go to, and you're going to know more about that in the next couple of days. But it's also a place which is one of the 10 top calamity prone areas in the world, 10 most hit. And one of the biggest my thesis was really how does the country deal being in this climate change risk? No, so we're number 3. So I was taking my master's and I was coming back and doing my thesis on completely something else, like development in the countryside. And I got hit by one of the worst typhoons to hit Bicol. This was in 2006. And basically, I stood in a hotel, and all the windows, it was basically like Survivor. The windows were all crashing, the roof got torn out. It was the first category 4s to hit the country. And basically, there was a village in front of me that I was studying, and it was basically wiped out. But one of the things that I did realize was the reason why we're number 3. Because when people in the countrysides cannot deal anymore with the 300-kilometer winds, when their houses built, in the 60s kind of design, square with, overhanging eaves, were all being torn apart, that they run to schools. And these schools, they cramp inside the schools because there's only largely built with cement, but still built in the old way. So cramped inside, and these schools collapse, full of people, and most of them have to go back into the storm. So that's when I realized that really we need a certain kind of revolution in architecture. So one of the things that I did experience was, so you could see what the village in front of me looked like. But more than that was the village that was built with really wood, with indigenous materials. It was completely wiped out. So I really was thinking, like, how do I rebuild some of the classrooms? So I stayed there, and aid was flowing in, but not the real stuff to help rebuild. So aid was flowing in food, consumptive. But while I was waiting, I said, look, I want to volunteer to rebuild some schools because I wanted the kids to start going back to schools. Even though some of them were, in shock, they could actually go back and mingle with other kids, share, and at the same time learn. So I was told that the roads were completely destroyed, the trees were down. I never completely understood why they keep on putting those poles with electricity hanging when every storm it would just collapse. Anyway, so I saw, when I went over there, I said, look, what can I build with? And I saw tons of plastic bottles. Oops. Yeah, just do it. Yeah, so I started seeing that they were throwing, there was food packs, but there were like thousands of plastic bottles that were being thrown away. So I said, look, I'm gonna stay here for a couple of months, but I don't want to wait for a month for this bricks to happen. So I looked at the largest school there, and I saw these bottles, so I started hiring people to start taking river mud and using the old technologies that the Spanish did with limestone here to build churches, started mixing them and putting them in the bottles. I would hire them so that they would have this livelihood, so especially the women groups, just pouring the mud, and then in about 2 to 3 days in the sun, the river mud would dry. Oops. Oops. I'm not getting good at this. Not that much cement was left, so I went to the warehouse. I only had, I think, 30 bags of cement. So what I did was I could not get steel bars. So chicken feathers are a great binding material. They eat the chicken and they throw the feathers out. So I was there, like, gathering chicken feathers. Yeah, don't ask me, they thought I was insane. Gathering plastic bottles and just like, oh, another plastic bottle. Chicken feathers reduce structural cracking by 98%. It's like when you open up a crypt. The things that you see inside the crypt are bones, you see nails, and you see hair, right? I don't know if you guys open up crypts, but that's my hobby. So, but we used also sausage making machines to be able to use them as small machines. But the multiplying a simple skill times hundreds of people that are displaced gives them also dignity, but also great classrooms. So these are not small ones. These are like 10-inch thick walls that are basically can withstand 300 kilometers per hour winds. It's filled with soil so that you could actually shoot a bullet through it. And I tried doing it and I was like reprimanded by the mayor. But I mean, how do you prove a structural integrity, right? You get a gun and shoot through in my logic, right? And then in front, I would gather glass bottles from, gin glass bottles. Don't ask me why in disasters there are liquor, but somehow booze happens to find a way. And so this is 1 month worth of waste. Just to give you an idea, this is 1 month worth of waste in a refugee area. This is not even like a normal functioning village. This is like 1 month. And so it was really interesting for me how in times of despair, when you're not thinking of what your budget is, right? This is not a budget. Like, they give me your budget and I will build you the number of schools. So there's no direct correlation. It's like, what do you do with almost nothing? And how do you create it? So not looking at your budget, but looking at your vision. And my vision was to create the schools back in this region as fast as possible. So that was the big thing. It was not to become a garbage collector. It was really like, how can I achieve the vision at all costs? And one of the things that chiefly annoyed me was the fact that the power companies always built their power plants right next to the coastal areas. And for many years, people said, don't build it next to the coastal because there's such a thing as storm surge, right? And they said, no, there's no such thing as tsunami here. I said, no. Storm surge is when the high heavy winds pushes the water from the sea into the coast, especially because our coasts are are bays. So the bay with strong winds from the Pacific would gather, and there's no way for it to go up. And anyway, they built new power plants. And so what happened was these people were going to be out without lights for the next year and a half. So taking back the plastic bottles, we would basically take those, and there were 7,000 shelters. They call them shelters. I call them barracks. They were plywoods. No lights, just bamboo weave. And so we took the plastic bottles, and then we stuck them in. And if you can play that video, we would see how between every 5 earthen bottles, we would stick one in, and light would just go so cleanly in. So we did not have glass, obviously. So that would provide a light refraction through the bottle.
Itong lugar namin, Sitio Maligayos, San Vicente, San Pedro Laguna.
Siyempre, alam mo naman, ganitong lugar, squatter area, tabing release, dikit-dikit ang bahay.
Matinig talaga rin sa lugar mo na to.
Wala kami dito sa loob, lagi kami sa labas.
Natatapas eh, madilim, yung dadaan, hindi mo alam, may nakaharang. Natutulog na lang ako, wala ilaw eh.
Ang tawag nila sa akin dito si Mang Dini Solar. Napaliwanag ko yung mga bahay niya ng dilim. Bubutas ka ng yero, lalagay mo yung bote, lagyan mo siya ng silan, bago lagyan mo siya ng tubig na mineral, lalagyan ng sunrox. Bakit kapit mo sa bahay, lagyan mo silan to para hindi tumulo. Hindi naman kasimple yun. Dati medyo pagkadilim ng bago kapitan. Pero nung kapitan ko na, ito na ang liwanag niya. May naiwan na.
Umili po ako kasi bote lang, tubig. Maliwanag na yung bahay mo.
Bumaba yung ano ko, pinayakan ko kayo. Simula nung makabitan ako nito. At saka itong solar bottle bulb na to, hindi mainit.
Dahil sa buti na yan, sa solar na buti na yan, gumanda ang araw namin.
Ang nalagyan na namin ito ay bali 643. Gusto na namin tuloy-tuloy para marami nga matulungan ng mga tao rin na ano, yung maliwanag yung mga bahay nila. Madilim.
Parang katulad na rin ng bumilya. Dati natin ang kalimutan at pakinabangan na ngayon. Maliwanag niya ang bahay namin!
So the idea in a climate critical country is to make yourself obsolete. The purest strategy is how to make yourself obsolete. How do you create resilience in the communities to build with alternative architecture? So much more than that, we also are I actually have a lab coat wherein we specialize in bamboo, soil. I can build you a two-story structure basically out of recycled paper and of course plastic bottles. So don't throw away your plastic bottle because that's a school. I can count you right here. One school. Okay. So basically the idea was how do you create from that idea is how do you create an emergency power system or emergency solar lighting system that not only my country, but I was saying, you know what, why don't we just change the whole dynamics of power? Why don't we create the largest grassroots solar lighting company, foundation in the world? So how do you do that? 3 steps. They don't have money. The big problem with solar is you have to go into microcredit, 60 to 80% to be able to buy it. So why don't you give them a bottle light free, not free, maybe 50 cents, employ lots of people to install skylights, but it's because they save about $4 to $5 every month in the city. And from there, they have money to upgrade into the next phase, which is, yeah. So basically, oops. Yeah. We wanted them to have a savings plan, starting with free energy that lights your house during the day. You don't have to turn on the lights, just like here. Then they would have a savings plan to upgrade into nighttime solar. And I'll show you a little bit about that. It has to be local parts, can be easily fixed and installed, made in the villages. But the nice thing there is we discovered that like the UN, the United Nations, spends as much as 60%, 62 exactly, of their budget transferring technology from one place into the world to the next. So if they want to give it to a refugee camp, what they would do is they would take it from one place in the world, for example, solar, India or China, put it on a truck, then put it in a container, rent the container, put it on a boat, make the boat go, put it on a truck. So by the time it reaches, 60% has been exhausted in something not dealing directly with the problem, which is logistics. So we were asking us, why don't you just teach people how to do solar lights? And they said, well, can they register with the UN? And I said, isn't that the logic? It's like, why don't you just empower people? Why do you have to do everything on, mass-based? Mass manufacturing has nothing to do with the people. You design one thing and you just dump it there. Plus, you spend 60% of your budget, 60 cents to every dollar, just shipping it from one place to the... The worst part of it is the manufacturers were so smart that they designed it to fail. The way they make business is it has to break so that in a year and a half, the UN, guess what, has to buy again. So solar is basically consumptive. I help 1 million people. If you're in the ground, you'll realize in a year and a half, you have 1 million destroyed solar lights. So anything that does not empower the people to do it without, without this manufacturing is going to end up in a failure. So then you save money to upgrade it into a nightlight. Basically, old cell phone batteries. In this hotel, what we would do is we would tell them, look, every year you have to change your emergency lights. Are there emergency lights? No emergency. There's emergency lights. You have to change the battery, and they threw it away. 80% still good. If you're using your cell phone, it doesn't charge completely. They throw away the battery. That's still good for people that don't have electricity. So we upgraded into something. It looks kind of strange, but at least they don't have kerosene lamps in the tent. You know, so it's something that we can build in scale. In fact, from supplies that we got in Cebu, we were able to light up 7,000. We were the first ones to light up the 7,000 bunks. Of course, we put in water so that it refracts, and then of course the LED inside. And we just use rubber tubes and PVC. Yeah, so you can upgrade it. But then some people didn't want a hole in the roof. Okay, so what we said is, what do you have? What's the next thing that I don't have to import? We found out that kerosene was highly used. So what we did was we created a national campaign to upgrade women's cooperatives all around the Philippines to learn how to convert their kerosene lamps into solar. There's 13 million kerosene lamps. So if you play that video, I'm almost there. I know. It's just how do you tell a whole story? So it was pretty great because what we would do is we would go to vegetable markets all around the country and then realize their husbands would bring the vegetables and the fish to the vegetable market. And what we do is we just throw raw parts inside because their baskets would come out go back empty. So you just put all the raw parts there and you teach the women all around the country how to build solar lights. And it created a great industry. If you lower it just a bit, it created an industry where the women started renting out the solar lights. And they would earn money, and then they would ask for more parts, and they would create this kind of rental systems. And so we would go around the Philippines, basically teaching these women cooperatives, look, just ask your husband, we will give you a credit. We will give you a credit in materials. We have a warehouse. Tell us how many solar lights you need. Go to the neighbors along the street and ask them, would you pay for a street light? Would you pay for a street light? And then give us about $2 a month to light up your streets. Would you do it? And most of them did. And so we went around the country teaching people how to make street lights, mobile charging systems, and lamps, all by hand. And of course, the thing that we had to do as somebody has to do it with a very cheap budget is Volkswagens. You can find parts anywhere, and it's such a good community that you can actually help people. But this is the adventure that we had to go through. If you can put it up louder. So we were trying to prove that everybody had everything to create their own solar industries. The nice thing there is the quality. The women made it so well because they didn't want their neighbors to complain with poor quality, that they actually knew how to repair it. And then if they had parts that they needed to get, they just go to the nearest electrical shop and the parts are readily available. So here we are transferring from dirty kerosene, and then with less than $5, you would be able to upgrade those kerosene lamps into solar. And the nice thing there is the replication was all done on a village level. The business model, women were lending it, the husbands were transporting all the needed parts to expand this business model from the central city without us having to spend that 60% to ship it. So these are the renters that wanted street lights, and they pay a monthly fee to keep their street lights. Crime has been reduced almost by 40%. Questions later, please. So we're down to 2 minutes, so I'll just skip this a little bit. If you just post that forward, the Sheikh of Abu Dhabi challenged us, invited, and says, if you can empower women, can you empower kids? And I said, yeah, just give me them for 3 hours. I can teach them in 30 minutes. How big do you want me to, how many do you want? 300 kids. What do you want me to do? Break the world record. I said, what? I said, can't you do anything small, like a small little like patio lighting? And so, anyway, so we got 300 kids, and they built 2,700 lights by hand. All we taught them in 30 minutes. Don't stop. This is the best part. Okay, that's the cheer. We made it. We made it. You can trust them. The sound effects. Anyway, let's go to the picture. Let's go to the picture. Yeah, we'll just go to the picture. Yeah. So this is the face. Is it there? Yeah. So I was asking, like, what do you want to build? Like the dove, like peace. Do you want the falcon? And I couldn't get it. I tried like 10, 12 times, and I said, what do you want me to do? The face of the founder? You can see their face like, you read our mind. And I tried to prevent it. I knew what they were going to do, but I said, what if I just misplace an eye, or I just don't make him as handsome? Can you imagine the whole UAE would hate you? Yeah, so anyway, that's his tomb. So yeah. Okay, anyway, so let's finish. Sorry about that. Just next speaker. Sorry, just really crazy. So we are now in 20 countries around the world. I have 2,700 active members. We hit about 500,000 lights everywhere. The best thing is I don't have to transport anything across continents. Each continent has their own solar production, so I just teach the women how to do it. And can I just end it with this? Sorry, it's just 2 minutes. Okay, play. So yeah, we just came back from Brazil, lighting the Amazon River. I do have 700 members there that know how to do it. And the women make a business out of it. They get their part from the central city. And the best thing there is I'm here talking to you, but this whole movement is going on without me around the world. So I just want to end my speech with what started out with a basic feeling of helplessness or waiting for people to help me, and that's been a great shame sometimes for me. That sometimes we're regarded as big handouts. We're always asking for help. I wanted to create one of the first Filipino global NGOs that gives back to people around the world, and the way that we do it is to give them skills and empowerment, but also to expand beyond what we give them. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming here all the way.